As the world's leaders continue to look at ways to address climate change amid global climate catastrophes that have affected thousands of lives already, there continues to be a push to educate people further on the science behind climate change. Now, this comes as experts warn of the impact of climate change on industries, infrastructure, pandemics, socioeconomic issues, and more. Well, joining us today to give us more insight into the impact of climate change and the scientific evidence behind this is Dr. Gordon McBean, chair of the Canadian Association of Professionals in Climate Change and a professor at the University of Western Ontario. Dr. McBean, welcome back to Forum Daily.
Thank you very much for inviting me back. I'm pleased to be here.
Now, sir, natural disasters we're seeing crop up around the world right now, the most recent being the earthquake in Turkey and Syria today. So, what evidence do we have that links these natural disasters to climate change in particular?
Well, first of all, I'd like to just emphasize that earthquakes, generally speaking, are not related to climate change at all. They're tragedies, as they are really horrific when they happen, but there is no direct connection with the changing climate that's particularly pronounced anyway. But we are seeing an increased number of floods, storms, hurricanes, these kind of things, which are related to the climate system. They're part of the way the system works. We're seeing as the climate is warming, and the evidence is very strong. The latest report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, written by a global group of experts, basically said it is unequivocal that the climate is changing due to human influence, that the greenhouse gases and other things we're doing are causing the climate change, and that is quite pronounced now. It's amped up in the last decade or more, so that their statements are much stronger than they were even when they wrote their last assessment report in 2013-14.
Now, I really want to build on what you said in terms of human influence on climate change. So, one of the top arguments among climate change skeptics is that these changes in measured temperatures are part of a natural cycle rather than being directed to human behavior. So, can you tell us a little bit more about the evidence that connects human behavior to these temperature changes?
Well, we look through and understand the way the climate system functions. The scientists, and it's a field I've worked on for now several decades, look into the way in which the climate is warming. And if you look at the data, particularly since roughly the last 50 years, we are seeing a increase in temperatures from almost no change relative to where it would have been in a normal situation to over a degree Celsius. And you say, well, a degree Celsius may not be too large, but a degree Celsius is quite significant compared to, even going in and out of an ice age is only 7 or 8 degrees Celsius global change. So when we're talking about global averages, a degree Celsius, and we're actually now close to 1.2 degrees Celsius warming, is quite substantial. And the should be noted that that value of 1 or 1.2 degrees Celsius, that is the global average. And in the way in which the climate system works for Canada, we're roughly 2 times more than that. So when we say 1 degree C global warming, we mean 2 plus in Canada, and in the Canadian Arctic, 3 or 4 degrees C global warming, or not global, but Arctic warming. So the temperature changes are going to impact Canada more substantially than, say, the United States or particularly Caribbean countries, North African countries, etc. And the evidence is strong now that with this changing climate has come an increased number of heavy precipitation events, strong wind events, and other dynamics that lead to creation of hurricanes. And with the sea level rising, which comes with the warming of the ocean and the melting of the ice, so there's more water in the oceans. With that sea level rise, the coastal cities that are particularly at risk are even more vulnerable now because the sea level that's affecting them and the storms that will come off that sea level are even more pronounced.
Very concerning information there, Doctor. Now, a quick minute left here, but what are your thoughts on Canada's efforts to address climate change? Is there any room for improvement?
Yes, we need to work together nationally and with our international colleagues to reduce greenhouse gas emissions more effectively. Canada, as greenhouse gas emissions per person, is 13 or 14 tons per person compared to, say, most Western European countries that are 7 or 8 tons per person. And if you look within Canada, The numbers vary from 8 or 10 in Ontario and Quebec and British Columbia to 60 or 70 tons per person in Alberta and Saskatchewan, which is primarily just due to the oil patch industry being centered there where they are producing it and delivering it out of the ground.
Interesting to hear the Canadian numbers. Dr. Bain, again, thank you so much for joining us today on Forum Daily. We'll be sure to continue this conversation in the near future.